We've had an enormous amount of research done on our farm, which has been enormously valuable to us. You know, hopefully it's valuable to others as well. But I mean, we've had people here measuring pastures every week through the growing season. We've had soil moisture monitors put in over the farm. We've had a whole EM map done. We've had drainage maps done, the whole lot, which is based out of the project. So it's been fantastic. They did TIA twist my arm? No, they probably didn't. I was always keen. I mean, this is our largest pivot of all the ones we've got, and probably on the most difficult site in terms of undulation and variance of soil types and things like that. So I was pretty keen to try VRI, so we put the VRI on it was sort of commissioned about November, December last year. And for us, it's made a huge difference in terms of just being able to manage those sorts of areas, the low points down through there and things like that. Yes, we let them get pretty dry at times, but it means that we're not creating a quagmire. We're managing to get the pivots through the pivot ruts, and we're actually using the water where it needs to be. Like, you know, obviously a bank like that behind us is a lot drier than you know, 2/3 the way down this slope down here. So being able to spread that water correctly has made a difference. I don't know, it's certainly, I think when James first arrived, he said, "You're the only bloke who seems to have his pivot going all the time. Why have we got the pivot going all the time?" But I mean, the reason was we were just constantly getting the information that we need to keep it wetter. If we want the growth rates, keep it wetter. Gee, that first year, in that dry year, once we got dry, I mean, January, February growth rates were probably 30 per day, whilst this year, what have we been growing at, James? Yeah, averaging 50s to 60s, yeah. So, you know, that's a lot of grass that you're growing. So, and it hasn't cost us much more. In actual fact, it's probably cost us less because with the VRI going on, we've got a VSD motor down there. So we're using, you know, we're putting the water where it needs to go and we're using less power to do it.
And you're growing more grass.
Yeah, and we're growing more grass, yeah. So summer, you really, I mean, if you've got your VRI right, you know, you should be plonking the water on everywhere. But it's, as we all know, going into autumn, we don't want to be watering that. And in same instance, that's probably still wet in December. So that's where I think you get your saving. My other saving is just, I think we save money on pivot ruts and gearboxes and stuff like that, because we actually have the VRI turning off over a lot of the pivot ruts. We can turn I mean, it's simple stuff. It turns off as it goes over the laneway, turns off as it goes over the channel. Now there's nearly 2 hectares of channel down there. So you're not watering that. 2 things we've done on that. One, we don't put effluent through the machine anymore, so we pump effluent out through a different machine, just because we had all the solenoids and I was concerned of blocking those. And secondly, we've put a big river screen down on the, so you know, it looks like a Ferris wheel. It's just, and it spins and self-cleans all the time. And that's just made a massive difference to block nozzles and all that sort of thing. So that's probably made a big difference. We don't have the bird issue, so we don't have bush around us or anything like that, so nothing gets chewed or eaten so far. It's a Zomatic field net VRI. It's got the ability to flick it into 2 test modes, so you can test, because most of the nozzles actually work by, so if you go to 50%, it just pulses. They pulse 50% of the time on, 50% of the time off. So you can test the pulse on every one, and you can then just flick it on to off so that everything comes on. So you know all your solenoids are opening and latching correctly. I mean, I said before, I reckon, to be honest, one of the biggest things we did is invest an enormous amount into pivot ruts. In terms of consistency of irrigation and just getting it going round and round all the time, they were probably one of our biggest limiting factors. And we'll spend another, I mean, generally do it in autumn, so it gives time to consolidate through the winter, and then, get into that again. And underground drainage is the other one. So we've started doing undergrounds out on the circles out the back, and well, actually, it's probably here tomorrow to start in here, and we're going to do some underground drainage work down through here. Yeah, through those valleys. Yeah, which is, I mean, look, if I get nothing else out of that, if it keeps my pivot ruts dry, I'll be delighted. Yeah. But I mean, we'll get vastly better growth rates through winter because it's not wet and sour, yeah. So the other thing I said in terms of scheduling, pivot's got a 6.7 mil pack on it. Realistically, once we hit mid-November, it's turn it on, leave it on. Yep. Because at 6.7, okay, we'll get evaporation rates of, mid-January this year we're probably 7, but at 6.7 we've got a bit of redundancy built in. Something goes wrong, the power goes out, the wheel falls off, you want to turn it off to move cows or do something like that, you've got that ability to start and stop it. And then there's not a lot of decision to be made. Is the pivot going? Yes. Good.